Welcome back, everybody, to the TWSN live show here on the Right Way Sports Network YouTube channel. I'm your host, Daniel Almeida. We do this every single Tuesday night, and I'm here with the typical crew. We got our guy, Jake Circus, who just hit 1,000 followers on Twitter. Jake, how you doing?
Feeling fantastic. Great to be here, as always.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we got Will, who's been a little bit more feisty on the podcast. He's been getting into some more debates. Hopefully, we'll see a little bit more of that today. Will, how you doing?
I mean, Daniel, every week, man, you send an email, say, bring the fire. So I'm just doing what you're telling me to do, man.
Yes,
No, but I feel great to be here. As always, ready to talk. I mean, we got everything. It's a jam-packed show tonight, so I'm ready.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And Max, our guy from Clemson. Max, I'm excited to hear how your prediction for the UFC, man. I mean, we got a big slate this weekend. How are you doing?
Doing great. I'm excited, obviously, for the fights coming up, but more excited, honestly, about the March Madness that's been going on. I mean, we've had a ton of upsets. I would argue it's been the best start to the tournament in its history. So I'm expecting this tournament to continue bringing us some great moments.
Yes, sir. So before we get into anything, make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel, right? We have live shows, we have video breakdowns, we have exclusive interviews, all that stuff on our YouTube channel. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter at TWSN. We have a mobile app too. Download our mobile app, TWSN. This is where it's at. But guys, let's start it off in the NFL. Last week, we talked a lot about winners and losers, but let's really touch a little bit more on that. I want to start it off with, what team do we feel like should have done more in free agency? And we'll start with you, Max.
I mean, you could make an argument for a few teams. I would say the Baltimore Ravens are the team that comes to mind. A lot of it comes with the fact that they have not been able to get a real wide receiver one for Lamar Jackson. You know, he's still relying on Hollywood Brown. We know that, there's moments of greatness there, but it's not really consistent enough where, they can rely on him. And I don't know if it's because receivers are kind of, discouraged by the fact that Lamar Jackson isn't really known for throwing the ball deep. They maybe think their numbers and their statistics are going to go down if they sign a 1-year prove-it deal there. They think they may actually get less value coming out of Baltimore. I think that's probably part of it. And we know that they've lost a few key players. For example, Matt Judon on the defensive side to the Patriots. They lost a few pieces on the offense here and there, especially in the offensive line. And look, I mean, I would just say the Baltimore Ravens, they're still in a position to succeed. I would still say they have to be a lock for the playoffs, barring any surprise injuries because of the greatness of Lamar Jackson and Jim Harbaugh and that connection. But, I mean, I feel like they should have done more in giving Lamar Jackson those weapons that he can trust and throw the football to, because if he doesn't have those weapons, he's going to continue being a one-dimensional quarterback, and albeit a great quarterback, but he could be on another level if you give him a big, tall receiver that can go and catch the ball for him. So I would say Baltimore.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm going to give two teams. One's like a team that I think is just looking like they're going to regress in 2021 based off their 2020 performance. And another team is a team that I think could have done more. I'll start with the team that I think could have done more. That's the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, so they came off of getting Dak Prescott, that big-time contract, which is great. And their offense is still really good. I mean, still going to be an elite offense. I have no doubts about that. But their defensive holes are just too big. It's too big to just be relying on the draft. It seems like that's what they're probably going to do. But I don't really know if I'd trust, Mike McCarthy and even Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn's cool, but I don't know if I really trust him to just completely solve this defense in year one in the draft. I think they had to do more in free agency to fill in this defense. Keanu Neal I'm actually more optimistic than most, I would say, about that signing. But if that's all they're doing to fix this defense, that's not enough. And we're going to get into the NFC East a little bit later. But I'm honestly disappointed in the Cowboys because it seemed like they could build on some of that momentum of getting Dak Prescott back. And they really didn't do that at all. I mean, Jerry Jones seemed like he was just asleep through free agency for basically he got the Dak Prescott deal done. And then what else did he do? Basically nothing. So I'm disappointed in that, especially since Jerry Jones has always, been known to overpay some guys and get aggressive and add talent to his teams in free agency. And he just didn't do that besides re-signing, albeit a huge guy. But I just need to see a little bit more. And then a team that I think is just going to show major regression. I'm not really disappointed in what they're doing in this free agency. It's actually my Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers offseason, to truth be told, really doesn't make much sense. I mean, maybe it makes a little bit of sense, but it's just unfortunate the position that they're in, because from their perspective, the Steelers' perspective right now is they want to give Big Ben Roethlisberger one more shot to try and win. But simultaneously, they're having to cut starters on defense, and they can't re-sign quite a few of their players on both sides of the ball. I mean, I'll say this: getting Juju for a 1 year, $1 million base salary with $7 million of incentives, that pretty much saved the offseason from being a complete disaster so far. Like, that was really good, but it's still overall a negative because they're losing 5 defensive starters. Now, they do still have, like, their core on defense is still there. I mean, they're like top 6 to 7 defensive players. Everyone except for Bud Dupree is still back. So defense is still going to be really good. It's just, I don't necessarily think it's going to be elite. I mean, you're losing a lot, like number 2 linebacker, number 2 corner, a nose tackle who's great at stopping the run, and Tyson Alualu. That's a lot. And altogether, I mean, their defense is going to take a step back. And I mean, Juju was already a player who was on their roster last year. So their offense isn't any better. And their offense last year was, frankly, a dumpster fire in those last 6 games. So the Steelers are going to show some regression, but they're also trying to give Big Ben one more shot. It just doesn't really. I mean, it makes.
So Will, you're not confident in your boy?
It's a terrible situation, frankly.
Will, you're not confident in your boy?
In Big Ben?
Yeah.
Win a Super Bowl? No.
So
let
me just ask you. I mean, because one of the biggest things I really learned.
I think he's still better than some people think. Because the thing is with Big Ben, when he's hot, he's really hot. But when he's not, he's just one of the worst. He can be one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, especially at that age, coming off the elbow surgery. So at 39, I just don't. He's not going to be consistent enough. And the AFC North is a cutthroat division. The Browns got better. I think the Ravens are probably still better than the Steelers right now. So I think the Steelers will just be third, and I don't think that's going to be enough to really get in the playoffs. I don't think 3 AFC North teams are going to be able.
You sure, Will? You sure not 4th?
Okay, here we go. There's a chance. I'll say there's a chance, but I have a hard time believing that a team that won 12 games last year is going to regress that much to the point where a team that only won 4 games in the Bengals are going to rise that much up.
You're completely undervaluing going from a second place schedule to a first place schedule. And the Steelers schedule last year was a cakewalk. And I know most of the
Jake,
AFC
North, the whole AFC North schedule was,
that's what I'm saying.
Pretty easy. And it's getting really tough. So everyone in the North has a tougher schedule.
But the Steelers, one of the reasons why the Ravens schedule was so easy because they got to play the Bengals twice, right? Steelers schedule was easy; they got to play the Bengals twice, and that was, for the last 10 years, it's been these AFC North teams have gotten to play the Browns twice. Well, the Bengals are not an easy loss, like a guaranteed loss anymore after what happened on December, whatever.
Jake, I learned that on Monday Night Football. All right?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at.
An easy win for the Steelers anymore.
I think that there is a legitimate path for the Steelers finishing last in the AFC North. I'm not going to say it's going to happen. I think there is a legitimate path, and they got worse. Well, they didn't get better. So if you're not getting worse, or if you're not getting better, you're getting worse, especially when all these teams are adding in new pieces. But I will give you a team that I'm surprised no one mentioned yet, the Indianapolis Colts, who were a quarterback away, because that's the new term nowadays, is if you're a quarterback away, one quarterback away, you're a Super Bowl team. And I'm falling into that trap. I love the Colts. I love where their roster's at. But Chris Ballard is known for waiting in free agency and then getting great value. And he didn't do that this year. He didn't do anything day 1. So I was like, okay, day 2, day 3, this is where he's going to come in, pull, Chris Vulture Ballard, and he's going to come in, make 2 or 3 great deals, and then he's going to improve the roster. And they didn't do that. They re-signed Xavier Rhodes. They re-signed Nico Altru, who I really, really like. Brissett left. They brought back Marlon Mack, which was kind of surprising. T.Y. Hilton's still a free agent. Justin Houston is still a free agent. I believe Malik Hooker is a free agent. Yes, he is a free. No, he is a free agent.
Yeah.
So he's still a free agent, and they haven't brought in really anyone outside of the organization. They're second in cap space right now. Let me read you the teams in cap space. The top 7 is the Jaguars, Colts, Broncos, Jets, Panthers, Chargers, and Bengals. All of those teams have made multiple moves outside. and Washington too. Washington's brought in William Jackson and Curtis Samuel, who were two of my favorite moves. The Colts haven't done anything. Like the Jaguars did moves. Broncos brought in Ronald Darby. Jets brought in Carl Lawson, Corey Davis. Panthers brought in a couple of guys. They brought in Reddick, who I really liked. Chargers really revamped their offensive line. Bengals completely reshaped their secondary and added to their offensive line and are going to keep adding to their offensive line. And then Washington made the star-studded moves, getting Samuel and William Jackson. Colts haven't done anything, and I still think they're going to win the AFC South. And I know it's March 23rd, and it's still very early, but there's not much left for them to do. I think they're working to re-sign T.Y. Hilton and bring him back, which I don't know if I agree with or not, but they really disappointed me.
Yeah, and I think I'm just gonna add on to that because I mean, literally, it's so funny that we're talking about this. Last night, I looked through the Colts schedule because I was like, okay, just looking through the teams. They're playing the AFC West, which is the Chiefs, and they're also playing the NFC West, which is the 49ers. They're playing the Rams, they're playing the Seahawks, and the Cardinals. So they have a tough schedule this year. And I was looking like, okay, if you come into the offseason top 5 in cap space, you got to make moves, right? If this is your pathway to success, they have to add pass rushers. That's what they did not do. As of right now, your receiving core is not great because T.Y. Hilton's not on your team. Michael Pittman Jr. is going to get better, but it's not great. So that's why I was looking through, and I completely agree with you. It's if they were going to make a push this year, I think we would have already seen it because everything else on the roster, I believe a championship caliber team. They could have easily beat the Bills last year in the playoffs. Didn't do it. But hopefully if Carson Wentz turns it around, he's that X factor. But still, the roster right now as it's currently constructed, I don't see them making it past the Chiefs, the Bills, or any other contender. But let's switch it to the NFC, and let's really focus on the NFC East, right? The worst division in the league. We got the Eagles, Washington football team, the Giants, and I'm missing one more.
A football team.
I said Washington, Giants.
Wars?
What'd you say?
Cowboys, Eagles, Giants.
Cowboys. Okay. So out of those 4 teams, I know, brain fart. Out of those 4 teams, right now, who is your guys' favorite to win the division? We'll start with you, Jake.
Oh, Dallas. I don't care what Mike McCarthy is doing or Dallas is a favorite in that division as long as Dak Prescott's their quarterback. He gets 6 games. Yeah, 6 games against Jalen Hurts, Daniel Jones, and Ryan Fitzpatrick. Are you kidding me? Like, Washington can add to their receiving core, and I think they're going to get Bateman or St. Brown or Moore in the draft. That's where I think they'll go. And they can keep adding to their defense all they want. If they're not scoring points, they're not beating Dallas. Like if you're not scoring points, you're not beating Dallas in this division. Now that doesn't go outside of the division. I'm just saying strictly divisional games, which in the past has proved who's going to win the division is your games, how you perform inside your own division. If Washington's not scoring, they're not beating Dallas. If Philadelphia is not scoring, which I don't think they will, they're not beating Dallas. And I don't think the Giants will score either. I don't care how much money they bring over for Kenny Galladay. He's not making Daniel Jones that much better, and it's a prove-it year for DJ. But Dallas is still the best team in this division. They had a down year last year. Van Der Esch was hurt. Smith had a bad year. They had a couple of rookies that I liked last year that I think are going to make second year jumps. I like this Dallas team. I'm not a fan of their defense, but I think they have pieces, and they're going to score 35 a game.
I'm going to disagree with you. And I know Max and Will are definitely probably going to disagree with you. I think as of right now, it has to be the Washington football team, whether it's because, I mean, look at their team, right? You win games in the trenches. You win games with that defensive line, and that's what they have. Their defense is going to be top 10. I believe it was top 10 last year. Their pass rush, their front 7 is absurd, absolutely absurd. And that's what I'm betting on, right? Last year, their offense was absolutely abysmal. We both know that. It was terrible, and that was with Alex Smith, and that was with Trevor Heineke. Right now, they have Ryan Fitzpatrick. We don't know if maybe they go out and trade up in the draft, but right now, Ryan Fitzpatrick, he can put up points. And their offense, as it's currently constructed, you're giving me Logan Thomas, you're giving me Terry McLaurin, you're giving me Curtis Samuel, a first-round receiver, Antonio Gibson. I'm confident in that team not to put up the points of the Dallas Cowboys, but I'm betting on that defense, right? That defense being the force of that team and the offense being able to put up more points than they did last year. I think this team is much more improved than it was last year. and last year they won the division. So that's why I'm betting on Washington over the
they,
Cowboys.
They won the division because Dak was hurt. They only won 7 games. So they won 7 games in a terrible division.
Yeah.
So I think when it's all scaled out, but the division is going to get better, I think they're still 7 or 8 win team, and Dallas will easily jump that. I don't think I don't think Washington's a double-digit win team.
I completely agree with Jake. I completely agree with Jake actually, because I think Washington. Okay, Washington is constructed to win the division better than Dallas, but the thing is, like Jake said, right? Barring any surprising injuries, I do expect that offense. Even last year, that offense with Dak Prescott was scoring points like it was the easiest thing to do. When you bring in a guy like Dan Quinn, I know the defense still has a ton of holes, but I do think you're going to start seeing significant improvement on the defensive side. So bring in a new face defensively, have a few guys back from injury, more notably, obviously, Dak Prescott, Leighton Vander Esch, among others. I mean, I just think Dallas is constructed to win this division. I think they should win this division. I would say Washington's right there with them, but let's not sleep on the Giants. I think Daniel Jones, you guys have all said it, this is a make it or break it year for DJ. But the moves they have made, if you look at just their moves on paper, they might actually have the best team in the division. If you look at just pure talent.
Yeah, I'm going to bounce off of that. So I'm actually going to go out on a limb here. And right now, because we still have the NFL draft, so a lot could change. And my thoughts on this could easily change in the future in the coming months. But playing the game of who I think is going to win the NFC East, this division is just so unpredictable. Like, it's just ridiculously. There hasn't been a repeat winner in like 2 decades. So I know that sounds silly not to trust Washington because of that reason, but I mean, it hasn't happened in 2 decades. So Cowboy, I'm definitely not going with the Eagles. I do not trust Jalen Hurts to win this division at all.
Yeah.
So down to the Giants or the Cowboys. And I'm going to lean with the Giants right now. It may sound a little stupid, but the Cowboys just are not balanced enough. And maybe it's just because I just do not like Mike McCarthy as a coach at all. Maybe it's because I'm not really a believer in Dan Quinn all that much, and and especially the Cowboys defense. But the Cowboys, I'm sorry, they're just not balanced enough, despite Dak Prescott's excellent, because he is an excellent quarterback. And I'm actually higher on the Giants. I think the Giants are a one defensive piece, like a Micah Parsons, Caleb Farley, Surtain, whoever they want to take in the draft at 11, or if they go offense. But if they draft that on defense, I think they're one guy like that, a first-round pick on defense, or just piece away on defense from being a great defense and being close to the Washington's defense. You give Washington the edge on defense, but I think the Giants are one piece away from being on par with that defense, in my opinion. And I'm a huge fan of what they've done to surround Daniel Jones. Like, this is the year for Daniel Jones.
Better be.
Obviously, yeah, it has to be Galladay. But here's the thing: like, they're adding Saquon Barkley back, and we saw last year Daniel Jones played kind of well for the end of the season, and we saw Gallman ball out. But I mean, you replace Wayne Gallman with Saquon Barkley, who is still one of the best running backs in the league. We cannot forget that. That's another dynamic, weapon who can alleviate even more pressure than Gallman did last year on Daniel Jones. Adding a number 1 like Galladay, assuming that he's healthy, I think that helps Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton is way better suited as a number 2 receiver than number 1. The jury's still out on Evan Ingram, but I think since it's a prove-it year for Jones, and if he does, I absolutely think that they're going to win the division. Does that mean they're going to do necessarily anything in the playoffs? Not really. I mean, if we're being honest, I think like the winner of this division is probably going to be like 9-7. But I think the Giants are super underrated here.
I think the biggest thing is I want to see for the Cowboys. I want to see how this culture changes. I want to see how Mike McCarthy coaches this team, and that's going to be really the biggest thing, because I bet on teams with a good organization. I bet on teams with a good culture, good head coach, and that's why I'm betting on the Washington football team. What I saw out of them last year, I saw a completely changed organization. I saw teams with passion. I saw Ron Rivera, the players getting behind Ron Rivera. And that's what I want to see with Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys. I think it's a great argument. I mean, Dak Prescott's the best quarterback in this division, so you're going to bet on him. I just need to see Mike McCarthy really step up and be the leader.
And I
But-
also think we saw that kind of from Joe Judge as well. He kind of inspired some hope in the Giants as well. Not necessarily to the degree that Ron Rivera did, but I think we'll see, a more similar investment in terms of the players and just the overall fan base and team buying in the Giants. And I think he could reap a division title next year. For sure.
Well, here's the thing with Washington before we finish the segment that I don't understand and why I can't put them as the favorites right now. Why, and this is coming from a Dolphins fan, by the way, so I love Ryan Fitzpatrick. But why would you go out and sign Ryan Fitzpatrick for $10 million when you can go and trade for Sam Darnold? You can trade for Marcus Mariota. These are two guys that can come in and make instant impact on your team. I mean, listen, I love the acquisition of Curtis Samuel to complete the receiving core. I think they've made a ton of other moves defensively that make sense. William Jackson, they added as well. But I just think they're still a quarterback away. And I hate to overuse that expression, but it's true. Fitzpatrick, we know, listen, he can come in and make an impact for a certain stretch of games. That's why we call him Fitzmagic. He has that 2 or 3 games where he plays out of his mind. But then for the rest of the season, right, for the other 12, 13 games, it's just like, is this guy good enough to be a starter? I think if you get a guy like Darnold and you surround him with that receiving core, you're going to get a better version of Darnold. I think if you would have gotten Mariota, I think you could have gotten more productive quarterback play. And I'm interested to see what they do in the draft. I could see them possibly taking a first-round quarterback, or maybe they just decide to pass on one and keep solidifying that offensive line. I'm interested to see what they do. But the reason why I can't put them over the likes of Dallas right now is because I just don't understand why they decided to commit to Fitzpatrick over a guy like Darnold or over a guy like Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, that's fair. And just to take us to our next topic, just give me a team that each of you guys think that hasn't really been given like the light of day by the media, whether it's a team that's like the Bengals that made some very underrated moves. Will, what's a team that you feel like hasn't been really given their fair share of media attention?
Yeah, so I mean, I had 2 teams that I think were really underrated winners in the free agency. That's the Jets and the Browns. I think the Jets have been given their just due because they had a good offseason. So I won't really mention them. I mean, they're adding pieces. Robert Saleh's defensive scheme, it starts as a defensive line, and they're adding really good talent to that defensive line. So that's excellent. And I think Corey Davis is one of the more underrated receivers in the NFL. So those are just 2 super underrated quality moves by the Jets. And I think they've been given their just due credit for those moves. I think the Cleveland Browns, the Browns were they're coming off a historic season for them. Because we know them as a losing organization, but they had an incredible season for their standards. And so I think they know their offense is pretty much set. Their offensive line is and everywhere on offense, you're adding Odell Beckham back. Like their offense is going to be one of the best in the league. But that defense, it has the pieces. Like Denzel Ward is a great corner. And then Myles Garrett is obviously one of the best defensive players in football, but they have holes other places. So they know that they have holes on defense, and their defense isn't perfect. They have elite talent in certain areas, but it's just not a complete defense yet. And they're bolstering their depth and getting quality players really at every level when you look at the moves that they've made. So it just tells me that they're not settling for what they got, what happened to them last season, and being able to take down the Steelers and almost get to the AFC Championship with Baker Mayfield. It tells me that they're not willing to settle and that they're going to continue to be super aggressive and to build off this offseason or off what happened last season. And I think that's huge, especially considering their organizational past.
Yeah. I want to talk about the Jets because it seems like it's been a week since we've talked about the Jets when they signed Davis and Lawson, but they haven't been quiet since then. They've made a couple really good moves that I like. They got Justin Hardy, who might not be the most popular name in the household, but one of the best special teamers in the entire league. And signing special teamers has proved to be very efficient in free agency. So they got him on a 3-year deal. They brought in Keelan Cole, who is one of the more underrated receivers on the market, signed him to a 1-year deal. They brought in LaMarcus Joyner, who's a vet safety. And then they got Sheldon Rankins, who I think made a Pro Bowl, maybe 2. The best IDL on the market at the time. And they gave him a bag. They gave him like $8.5 million. But he's a great player. So like they're making moves. They're improving the team. They're going to have another good draft class. They had a great draft class last year, guys who were injured in 2020 who are going to come back and be productive this season. And I expect them to make more moves and have another good draft class. So the Jets, I think, have one free agency. I think that they're surpassed the Patriots. They're surpassed the football team, the Bengals.
No.
Yes, the Jets have improved their team more than the Patriots have.
Oh, I thought you were saying like they're gonna.
Oh no, they're still. But
okay, I was like,
they've improved.
I disagree. I don't want to talk about the Patriots too much. I just, at the end of the day, that's just talent to their team. Right now, the way the Jets are going to succeed is if last year's prospects turn out good, right? Denzel Mims, if he turns out to be a baller, Ashton Davis, if he turns out to be a baller. And this year's prospects, that's what's going to really carry this team. I think they made the good moves, right? Carl Lawson's a great defensive end, and you also Corey Davis. They also had Keelan Cole, as you said. Those are good guys. Like, they're talented guys, but I don't really think that those are going to be franchise-changing guys. I don't think that they're going to help their team win 1.5 more games than they did last year. It's all going to end up, what do they do with their quarterback, and how do their prospects turn out from last year and this year?
Did the Patriots sign anyone franchise changing? You don't change franchises in March.
I think what they're going to do is, obviously this might not be free agency, but they're going to change up their offensive scheme. And by them, bringing back Cam Newton, because the 2 tight end sets, I think that's going to be huge to their offense. Last year they ran 2% tight end schemes. I think that's going to bump up at least 8%. They're going to be in the top half of the league with that because of the talent they added at tight end. And also bringing back Cam Newton, that still counts as free agency. And I like Cam Newton. I do. I hope we go out and get Trey Lance or Justin Fields. But if Cam Newton's the guy there, this team, they're talented enough. The 2 tight ends, that's what pushes it over the top for me.
The Patriots added more talent than the Jets, but I think the Jets made better moves, like money-wise.
That's fair.
The contracts that they signed, that fits the talent that they brought in. Not every move that the Patriots have made, like there's some overpays there. I think it's a little bit over-exaggerated. Like people say, they overpaid everybody. No, some of those deals are solid. They've made, I don't know, the Jets made a little bit less. They obviously made significantly less talent, just raw talent-wise. Like the Patriots have added more, but I think the Jets is just contractually, it makes a little bit more sense for them.
That's fair.
I would say one team that we haven't touched on that I spoke about a few weeks ago is the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, obviously, they're going to bring in Trevor Lawrence in the draft. That's pretty much done. But they brought back Cam Robinson, who's their left tackle, I believe. They re-signed Sidney Jones, Trey Herndon to kind of reinforce that secondary. Obviously, they signed Marvin Jones, who's a veteran presence, who would be a good slot target for Trevor Lawrence to throw to on day one. They traded for Malcolm Brown from the Saints, who we know is a very solid defensive lineman. They brought in Philip Dorsett to continue adding some more talent to that already, I would say, underrated receiving core. And then they also added Carlos Hyde to kind of solidify that running back spot. It's more of a depth signing, but I do think he has a lot to offer there. And then I guess a more underrated one is bringing back Aldrick Rosas. We know that, he got cut from the Giants because he had some legal issues off the field or something like that. But then, he came and he's still, I would say, one of the top kickers in the league. So I think Jacksonville, they're setting themselves up to be, they're not going to be a great team. I don't even know if they'll be a winning team, but I do think that they're going to try to surround Trevor Lawrence with weapons he can trust. And they're going to help the transition of both quarterback and coach. Urban Meyer, we know he's never coached a game in the NFL. So I think they made the right moves in filling some holes and making that transition a little bit smoother for both of them.
Yeah. And I mean, okay, one thing, Trey Herndon is signing by the Jaguars. I'm sorry, he's so bad.
He's not great, but I'm saying at least they're bringing back the personnel.
At least 4 games with this team. I don't know why. Like one night I just watched, he's bad. Like, I don't know. It's depth though. It's depth signing. So
that's what I'm saying. They're bringing back just some decent depth. Yeah.
So really quickly, I just want to touch on this, get everybody's quick opinion. Deshaun Watson, right? I mean, like the allegations are there. I don't really know the actual logistics behind it, whether it's sexual harassment or what it was, but allegations have been filed against Deshaun Watson. I think as many as 12 people have came out and said they've faced harassment or so-and-so from Deshaun Watson. Does this change his trade value / if he's even going to be traded this year? Like, Max, you're obviously nodding your head. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a question if these allegations are true. Obviously, innocent until proven guilty. So I'm not going to jump the gun yet. But if he's proven true, he may not play a football game this entire season. He may even get cut by the Texans if this is true. So I think it completely changes the narrative entirely. Frankly, even if, say, nothing happened and this is all, it's proven that he's innocent, I still think it does affect his trade value because teams may be trying to shy away from the controversy that comes with bringing a guy like Deshaun Watson who's facing all of these allegations. So I think this actually hurts the Texans more than people are saying it does. So I think his value absolutely went down. I don't think you're going to have to give up, like 3 or 4 first-round picks anymore. You may have to give up 2 first-round picks, which is still a lot, but I still think that's a significant decrease from what his value once was. And on a side note, I really hope for his case and for the NFL as a whole that these allegations are false because, he's a high-character guy. I remember watching him in college. Obviously, it's before I came to Clemson, but everyone here treats that guy like a god because, great player, but he's a high-character guy. And I really hope for his sake these allegations are false. But if they're true, I don't see him playing football for a decent amount of time.
Yeah. $1 billion organization is not giving up. A $1 billion organization is not going to collect their best possible assets and give them away for a player who might not play football for multiple years or a year and change. Because if these allegations are proven to be true, we're not going to see Deshaun Watson for quite some time. So the trade, and there's plenty of rumors out there about this lawyer guy who was friends with McNair. He was neighbors with him. There's a lot of moving parts here. I'm not gonna say what I think is true because I can't tell you anything. But the trade negotiate, he will not be traded this cycle because this is going to take longer than a month to unpack. And, the most valuable assets that were to be in a Deshaun Watson trade are 2021 draft picks, and the draft is in less than 40 days. So I don't think this thing is going to be over in 40 days unless a miracle happens. So I think Deshaun Watson's going to be Texan next year. And that's crazy to say because this all broke a week from today, like a week last 7 days from now while we were on this show. I'm pretty sure that's when the whole story broke.
Breaking news.
It's been a long week, and I don't think Watson's going to get traded now, at least for this year, and might not even play next year.
Yeah, I mean, so the chances that, from a legal standpoint, like the chances that these are all settled and this whole fiasco is sorted out, and before the next season, is pretty unlikely. Just based on the fact that I believe there's 14 or maybe even 14 to 16 just individual lawsuits. I mean, the NFL, they suspended Ezekiel Elliott for 1 of these. So I think they suspended him for 4 or 6 games or something like that. And that was just for 1 of these lawsuits. So Watson, he's not getting dealt for some time. I mean, like you said, what team is going to trade for him with all this stuff brewing? That's just a terrible PR and marketing move at this point. And you're also giving up a ton of assets. And I mean, that would just be a whole new controversy for that team to take on Watson. Even if he's not proven to be guilty, I could still see Watson not playing in the season. I don't think he's going to play next season at all. I don't think he's getting traded, and I also don't think he's going to be playing for the Houston Texans because he said he was literally going to refuse to play. And we'll see if the NFL decides to suspend him if some of these become true anyways. But even if this isn't as bad as it seems and he is, this isn't true about him, this is going to take just so much time to unravel. And Watson, he said he doesn't want to play with the team that he's even on. So I think Watson, the next time we're going to see Deshaun Watson on a football field playing is going to be in 2022, probably for still a different team than the Houston Texans. But I don't think he's going to play this season.
Yeah, I'm not going to go as far as saying he's not going to play this season because, I mean, we'll see what he decides to do. He might end up just saying, hey, screw it. I'm on the team. Might as well play. But let's talk about a little bit of madness, right, guys? I mean, March Madness this year. I mean, I'm not a huge college basketball guy, being completely honest with you. I'm not. I literally the other day I picked my new team. I said, I'm going to be a UNC fan. But this March Madness cycle has been absolutely absurd. We've seen teams like Loyola Chicago do it again, make the Sweet 16. We've seen Oregon State. We've seen Oral Roberts, Syracuse, UCLA in the Sweet 16. We've seen a bunch of teams who really just make these crazy runs, and that's what March Madness is about. But talk to me a little bit about what has been the most surprising things you've seen, and what's a team that you think can really make a run and be that Cinderella team? And we'll start with our basketball guy, Will Laughlin.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say Oral Roberts surprised me, but I mean, it really didn't, because I did say it. Now I will say this:
Whoa.
when I was talking about Oral Roberts,
Did it surprise you?
So no, look, these were hunches. These were upsets that I thought.
Oh,
Did you pick this? Hold on. Did you pick this in your meme bracket? Did you pick
first
this?
of all, I've made multiple brackets, and I have picked Oral Roberts and North. I picked all those in some brackets, but not others. Guys, this is just who I am. I love March Madness. All right.
In your upset bracket.
You can deal with
It's
it.
meme bracket.
No,
This is
no,
meme
no other
bracket.
brackets. So my hunches were kind of on point. And honestly, just generally, this March Madness is honestly just reminding me why I love March and this time of the year, and really this sport so much. I mean, like Sunday was incredible. I was just watching a game, and it went down to the wire, and both teams were just pouring their hearts out on the floor. And then I tuned into another game, and the exact same thing's happening. It was just great game after great game after great game, like in a row for like 4 or 5 games in a row. It was incredible. When it comes to teams that I think can make some noise, I mean, I'm honestly surprised. The team that I'm most surprised about in 2 of his 20 brackets, sure. I made less than 10 brackets. All right, guys. I'm not.
That is such cap, Will. You definitely made 30. You definitely
The golden number of brackets is like 3. If you go past 3, it's a little.
It should be 1.
I'll send you a screenshot.
I respect
after.
Send us a screenshot.
But the team that I'm most surprised by is honestly Oregon State. Like, Oregon State was legitimately a bad basketball team for most of the season until the tournament. And then they just went on a great run in the Pac-12 tournament. They won the tournament championship, and they've carried that over. But I wasn't really expecting that, because Tennessee has couple NBA guys in Springer and Keon Johnson. So I was expecting them to beat. But I guess I should have learned my lesson to never trust Tennessee per usual. Oh, well. So Oregon State surprised me. Syracuse, I did think Syracuse would beat San Diego State, but I didn't think that they'd beat West Virginia. I thought West Virginia was going to beat them. Dead wrong about that. So I honestly think Syracuse is going to the Final Four. I think Syracuse is going to carry this momentum. I think Syracuse.
I'm sorry to say. Let me look. I'm not saying what you're saying is outlandish, but I'm willing to just put this out there right now. The winner of the Loyola Chicago Oregon State game in the Sweet 16 will be the representative for the Midwest region in the Final Four. Those are the 2 best teams in the region at the moment. Will spoke about, Oregon State a little bit. Let's kind of touch on them a little bit more. They were predicted in the preseason, before everything started, to be the worst team. They were projected to be the worst team in the Pac-12. They go out and win the conference, as I believe they were a 4 seed. They might have been a 4 seed in that conference. Go and upset a variety of different teams, and they went on and beat and they even beat Oregon and won the Pac-12. You have Loyola Chicago, who I think was severely underseeded. People were talking about this prior to the tournament, but there's a little bit of debate back and forth. A lot of it is because of the conference they play in. But I mean, let's use their most recent game against Illinois as an example. I would say that was a shocker, because Illinois, I think the statistics show that Illinois was the second most picked team to be in the national championship on the brackets, on people's brackets, and for good reason. Illinois was dominant throughout the season. They won the Big Ten, but I mean, the way that Loyola Chicago was shooting the basketball, and Krutwig specifically down low in the post. I think Charles Barkley called him Nikolai Jokic without a 3-point shot, and he did play like that. His distribution was very impressive. His low post game, and he just played with a lot of finesse. And even though he doesn't look like the most athletic guy in the world, he definitely played like it. So credit to him and credit to Loyola Chicago. But I don't know. I'm still on the fence on this game. I think this is going to be, in my opinion, the most entertaining game outside of maybe Michigan and FSU. I would say it's probably going to be more entertaining than Michigan FSU in the Elite Eight. because I just think that these are two teams that people didn't really expect to be in this position. And I think these are two teams that, should they win this game, they're going to be a real threat to make it far in this tournament. And that's why I'm willing to go out there and say, I think the winner of this game will be making the Final Four for the Midwest region. And I'm really excited to watch how that game unfolds.
I agree and disagree with both of you. I don't think Oregon State will beat either Houston or Syracuse. But I think Loyola Chicago is Houston's still the best. Like they're the best team. They're a 6-point favorite against Syracuse, as they should be. I think Syracuse is going to win the game, but I'm not like Houston can still make the Final Four. Oregon State would not beat Houston. Oregon State will not beat Syracuse.
I think they could. I think they could. They could, because let's look at the way that Rutgers just played them. If it wasn't for Rutgers being Rutgers, we wouldn't be talking about Houston right now. We'd be talking about Rutgers in the Elite Eight. So I don't think Houston. I think Houston is the best team, I think, on paper, but they certainly haven't played like it, especially most recently in their past game.
Right. And I think the Syracuse zone is going to affect any team they play. But Loyola is really good on the perimeter, and they have a dominant big. Like, that's normally a mix for success. If you're really good on the perimeter and you have a dominant big. Syracuse is led by their guard, Buddy Boeheim, who's a menace. The guy's unbelievable.
He couldn't miss.
They have multiple guys who don't miss. West Virginia, first of all, couldn't score. They were scoreless through 4 minutes of the game. Like, they just cannot beat the zone. And then what's his name? McNeil just started shooting from Mars and started making them. That was West Virginia's only offense, and they had a lead, and Syracuse was just better than them. But Loyola, I think, is better than Syracuse. They'll handle Oregon State. I'm confident about that. And then I think they'll meet Syracuse for a chance for a Final Four bid. But Oregon State's clearly the fourth best team in this region.
So just let me ask you guys this. I mean, because we have 3 number 1 seeds still in the tournament, right? Illinois lost. What team is most likely to lose right off the bat? I mean, Gonzaga, Baylor, or Michigan. Which team is going to lose?
Michigan.
I think it has to be Michigan, because they're playing a team that could very well make the Final Four in FSU. But we'll see. I mean, I think, like I said earlier, that's going to be the second, in my opinion, and for me personally, it's going to be the second most entertaining game of the weekend, aside from that Loyola Oregon State game. So.
Yeah, I agree. Not only is Michigan the worst out of those 3 teams, no disrespect, but Baylor and Gonzaga are just the 2 best teams in the country, and they have been all season. So Michigan, not only are they the worst 1 seed remaining, but they also have the toughest matchup. Like Florida State, they're legit. They have, I think, is a top 10 NBA prospect in Scotty Barnes. I love him. And they're also just exceptionally coached by Leonard Hamilton, as always. So I expect Florida State to beat Michigan, actually.
Yeah, I think it's been crazy, man. I mean, Sister Jean, is that how you say her name? Loyola
never doubt. We never should have doubted Sister Jean.
You can't bet against Sister Jean, man.
They played on a Sunday. Of course, they were going to win.
But I will say, I want to mention one thing is, Oral Roberts is the definition of what I would call an electric factory. They're awesome. They went out and beat two schools that are so polarizing that I would say a lot of football fans especially cannot stand, in Ohio State and Florida, which makes their surprising run to the Elite Eight that much better. And listen, I think all of America is going to be rooting for them against an Arkansas team that can really make some noise in this tournament. And let's just see. Maybe this isn't the end for Oral Roberts. If they beat Ohio State, they beat Florida. Why can't they beat Arkansas? You can't roll anything out in March, but it's going to be interesting to see.
It's upset season, baby. It's upset season. But let's keep it on the basketball note, but let's switch to the NBA. One topic I really want to talk about, big time news last week or early this week. LeBron James is out, high ankle sprain, out indefinitely. Not sure how long he will be out, but guys, we'll start off with Jake, who's a LeBron lover, right? He's probably not going to watch basketball until LeBron gets back on the court. Man. But LeBron James, obviously, in terms of MVP race, he's most likely not going to win it now. But what is the impact of this injury on his MVP race and also the team as a whole in the playoffs?
Well, it's the second. I think it's the first, the biggest injury of his career. He had the one in 2019 2019 in his first year with the Lakers that cost him a month and a half. Lakers were the 4 seed when he went down, and they missed the playoffs because he wasn't available, and then he wasn't the same when he got back. And this injury is interesting. So the consensus right now is that he's not going to be playing for a month, but he might force himself back earlier, which would be certainly interesting. He was in a walking boot the other night, so we think he's going to be out at least a month. And the Lakers play 16 games from now until the end of, or from now and then a month from now. So the Lakers have 16 games, at least 16 games that they are going to be playing without LeBron James. We don't know when Anthony Davis is going to come back. But what this does for their title hopes, I don't think it makes it any, like, it takes them out of it. They're still a great team with LeBron and AD both on the court and healthy. But what this is going to do is the Clippers, the Nuggets, and the Blazers are probably going to jump them in the standings from now until the next month. So the next time we'll be seeing Lakers basketball with LeBron James, it might be as a 7 seed or a 6 seed. And they won the title last year with no home games. So I'm not entirely discouraged about them not having home court advantage in the Western Conference playoffs, especially if the 1 and 2 seeds, Jazz and Suns. I don't think LeBron and AD are going to lose to either of those teams. But what this does with the MVP hopes, the MVP is most likely gone, and it makes the finals run harder, but not any less likely.
Will, who keep it on the MVP race now? Who's the favorite? I mean, Embiid's also hurt. What's the race looking like?
Yeah, so I mean, my top 4, or just about the LeBron Lakers stuff, like they're 5 games ahead, and they have a pretty tough schedule actually with the remaining, but they're also going to get Anthony Davis back. So Lakers are going to be fine. They're going to drop in the standings, but there's no crowd, so I'm not really if they're a 7 seed and they're having to play like a 2 seed Suns in the first round, I'm really not too worried about because there's not going to be a crowd, so it's not really true home or road games. So I'm still fine with the Lakers, and I still think they're the favorite in the West. But when it comes to the MVP, my top 4 without LeBron and Embiid for obvious reasons would be Jokic, Harden, Giannis, and Dame. Giannis right now has a minor injury, so we'll see about that. I believe it's a left knee injury, so he may be out for a few games, maybe a few weeks. We don't really know. Harden, when Kevin Durant comes back, we'll see. I think you kind of saw it with the Warriors. Is like Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, they took themselves out of the MVP conversation because they both were so great that neither one of them could shine at an MVP level. And I think that's a similar thing with Harden, Kyrie, and Kevin Durant, even though Harden was still balling when Kevin Durant and Kyrie were on the floor. So when Kevin Durant comes back, it might be a little tough for Harden, but we'll see. Personally, I think it's Nikola Jokic's race to lose, absolutely. He's been in the MVP race really since the start of the season. I honestly think he's having one of, if not the best offensive just seasons from a big man statistically of all time. Like, let me read 27, 11, and 8.5 on 65% true shooting, which is 57% from the field and 42.5% from 3. And I believe like a mid-80s is free throw percentage. That's incredible. I mean, that's basically that's a step up from his playoff stats. And usually his regular season stats are like good, but we know he takes it up to that elite level in the playoffs. But he's putting up these playoff stats in the regular season, and he's been doing it all year. And earlier in the season, people were saying the Nuggets weren't really winning, but I mean, like they'd be the 4 seed in the East, close to the 3 seed if they were in the East. Right now, I believe they're tied with the Blazers, or I think they're the 5th seed, a couple games back from the Clippers. So I don't really care that they're like in the middle of the West, because I just don't see anyone who's have been more valuable to their team. Like Michael Porter Jr. is their 3rd best player. He has not stepped up. Jamal Murray has not been who he was in the bubble at all. He's been back to his normal form, which is really inconsistent, but he can be great when he gets hot. This has been the Nikola Jokic show all season for the Nuggets. I mean, without him, they would not be in the playoffs. And I think he showed his MVP value. His offensive value has been second to none in the league this year. It's his race to lose.
Yeah, and I mean, it sucks, right? I mean, because LeBron James, both him and Embiid, I believe, Embiid was my favorite, and it sucks how they're both going down with injuries. But let's switch the topic here, our final topic, UFC. I'm getting much more into UFC now. I think Max, Malik, Dorian, all you guys are getting me into UFC. I love it, right? And we got a big time card here this upcoming week, UFC 260. And Max, we'll start off with you. You're a UFC guy. Talk to me about the first. We have 3 main fights. Woodley versus Luke. I believe I said his name right. Talk to me about that fight.
So Tyron Woodley, we know this. Tyron Woodley had his time, right? He had his time as champ. He looked unbeatable until someone by the name of Kamaru Usman came in and destroyed him. And then after that happened, Woodley has yet to win a fight. So if this fight is going to be anything like, the Gilbert Burns fight, which Woodley fought last year or late last year, which put Gilbert Burns in a position to fight Usman for the title, I just think this is going to be a quick and easy out for Tyron Woodley. I think he's going to have to look at retiring pretty soon if he loses his fight against Vicente Luque, who people don't talk about enough. This guy is dominant. This guy has not lost a fight. He did not lose a fight in 2020. His most recent loss was to Wonderboy Thompson in 2019, early 2019. And then after that, he went on to beat Mike Perry. He even beat Nico Price, who's one of these guys that were up and coming. I think that Tyron Woodley is past his prime, and I think Vicente Luque is going to take advantage of that, and he's going to put himself in a position to get some more recognition because he's one of the more underrated guys in the business. So,
Jake?
I don't like talking about Tyron Woodley, and I know it's weird because I have the Mizzou flag in the background and he went here, but he's just not like good anymore. Like there's no buzz for his fight. Like he what? He's been on a pretty big losing streak, and
he hasn't won a fight since he lost to Usman.
Yeah, I don't.
Which happened how many years ago? It's been what, 3 years since he's won a fight.
I just don't like the guy. Like, he's boring.
Yeah, he's a snooze fest.
So Usman is everything that people want Tyron Woodley to be, and he's a huge underdog now. Like, he's not the chosen one anymore. Like, Vicente's a really, really good fighter, and I don't see why he's not going to get this done, guys. Like, I don't the Vegas odds say that Vicente is going to beat him pretty bad, but Willie's not a good fighter anymore.
Yeah, and I think just transitioning into our next fight, big time fight, Sean O'Malley versus Thomas Almeida. A little nugget, we actually interviewed Sean O'Malley, Max and I forgot who else we had on the show, but we interviewed him about this past summer, and it was an awesome interview. Make sure you guys go check that out. Subscribe to our YouTube channel while you're here. And big time fight for him. The last fight, I mean, kind of controversial ending, right? He got beat, but supposedly got injured, but it kind of looked like a questionable injury. But Max, are we expecting him to win this fight? Are we expecting him to bounce back here?
I'm completely expecting the Sugar Show to be back. I think, when we interviewed him, it was right after he knocked out Eddie Wideland. He was, the top of the hype was there. He was still undefeated. And then, unfortunately, right after that was the Cheeto Vera fight. Kind of, his leg gave out or his foot gave out on him. And I feel like, frankly, he kind of gave up on himself there. And he got knocked out pretty quickly. But look, he's going to go into this. He hasn't fought in a few months. He was very active prior to that loss. So I think he had some time off to kind of just reassess himself and kind of get back into the swing of things. And I fully expect him to beat a guy in Thomas Almeida who hasn't won a fight in the UFC since 2016. So I think, frankly, if Almeida loses another fight, I don't really see him fighting in the UFC much longer. So I think Sean O'Malley should get back on track and win this fight pretty easily.
Yeah, that's exactly what this is, right? It's to get him back on track because he was kind of inching towards championship contention with all those wins, and then he had the stinker a couple months ago, or with the controversy with his foot and the injury and all that stuff. But that's exactly what this fight is. It's to get him back on track. And Almeida, he has the tools to win this fight. It's been a long time since he's looked good, though. He hasn't, like Max said, he hasn't won a fight in over 4 years. So I think O'Malley comfortably gets this done. It might not be a good fight. Who knows? But he has some of the best boxing in the sport, and he'll have the edge in this fight, clearly.
Yeah, and before we get into our main event, I want to just talk about last week's fight, Kevin Holland, real quick. Like you guys know, I'm not a huge UFC guy, but I love Kevin Holland. Like I can envision, like, he's fun. Like, I want to get you guys' opinions. Do you guys want him to like shut up while he's in the ring, or do you guys embrace him for being the character that he is, for laughing during the fight, literally joking around during the actual fight? Do you guys like his personality, or do you think it's too much?
Well, I mean, look, in 2020, it was fine because he went 5-0, right? I mean, he was talking just as much as he did in that Derek Brunson fight, and he was beating everyone. I mean, let's look no further than the fight against Jakar Souza. That was one of the most freak knockouts I think I've ever seen. He was on his back and literally knocked him out, which I don't know if you'll ever see that again in the fight game. But, Kevin Holland, here's my thing. I have no issue with the trash talk, but don't let it distract you when you're getting dominated in a fight. That Derek Brunson fight was not even close. Derek Brunson clearly had the edge in terms of weight, so he was able to easily take down Kevin Holland. And frankly, he exposed Kevin Holland for not having the ground game we thought he did. He was taken down very easily, and we saw him, talking in his ear and that sort of stuff, and then also screaming at Habib, who was actually watching the fights with Dana White. And that's all fun and games, but when you're down, 2 rounds to nothing, 3 rounds to nothing, you got to kind of just put your head in the game and just say, listen, I can't be taken down anymore. I can't be joking around with Habib and being distracted. If he's winning and it's a dominant fight, I'm all for it. But in that position where he was getting absolutely destroyed, you got to shut up, dude.
Yeah, I mean, he lost, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, if you do all that stuff and you lose, you look stupid. So, sure, it's fun, but the guy lost. Like, that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, it's fun, man.
Yeah, it's only crazy if it doesn't work. If you're winning, it's cool, but when you're down, hopefully, you just got to put your head in the game, as you said, Max. So,
yeah, I mean, we all know he won't change, though. He made a video after. He's like, I'm not changing. So that's fine. But big time fight. The main event, Miocic versus Ngannou. This is round 2 of the fight. Miocic won the first round. And Max, I think we were talking about this before. Ngannou's actually favored. And I want to get Jake's opinion on this first. Who's going to win this fight? What are you thinking? Is round 2 going to be any different than round 1?
You want
Jake?
me first? Me first?
We'll start off with you.
Okay. So this is I love this fight. I love this fight so much. But I value actually being in the ring. Like, I love what Francis has done over the last year or so. Like, he has been in the ring for a combined 1.5 minutes, and he's won 4 fights. Like, this guy just knocks people out. Now, he's not going to do it to Stipe. Like, Stipe is too good to get knocked out in under 2 minutes. That's not going to happen in this fight. But the last fight, whatever Francis was doing, Stipe had a counter for, and he proved that he was the better fighter. Stipe's been an underdog multiple times in his career, like in the last 5 years, including his last fight against Daniel Cormier, when he should have not been an underdog, and he was, and he dominated him. And I'm not going to sit here and say Stipe is going to dominate Francis Ngannou, but I think he's going to win the fight comfortably. I don't know why he's an underdog. There should be no doubt that Stipe has more tools in his bag to win this fight. Like, can Francis land the one clean shot and knock him out? Sure. But he should not be the favorite to do so just because he has that ability.
I completely agree. The thing with Francis is, he's so dominant because he has just the sheer power of his punches and his knockout ability. The fact that he ends his opponent so early. But here's the thing with Ngannou that people don't talk about enough. If you watch Ngannou's fights, he is like the least technical fighter I think I've ever seen in my life in mixed martial arts. And what do I mean by that? Look no further than his fight against Jairzinho Rosenstrike, where he knocked him out in 20 seconds. Yeah, he knocked him out in 20 seconds, but watch the fight. He started off that fight just throwing haymakers, punching in the air. It was just such an ugly start to the fight. But here's the thing with Francis. The one shot that connected knocked him out. So listen, the same thing can happen with Miocic because Francis has that power. But as we saw in the first fight, if Stipe can survive the first round and the flurry of shots that are going to come from Ngannou, and we know that Stipe has a strong chin, then I think Stipe should easily win this fight, and I think he should dominate Francis. But I think the first round is what he needs to avoid. That's why Vegas loves Ngannou, is because he ends fights early and he puts people to sleep. But people are underrating the fact that he is not a technical fighter in the slightest. Stipe is the definition of a technical fighter. So Stipe is going to come in expecting those haymakers. He's going to do his best to avoid them. He may get hit with a few, but we know he has a tough chin, and we know he can take a punch or two. So if Stipe can survive the first round, I'm putting it out here, he will dominate this fight. And I expect him to finish Francis within probably the second or third round. So I think the fact that Stipe is an underdog, despite absolutely demolling him or decimating him, the first fight, I think is absolutely ridiculous. And it's one of those few times, Vegas usually gets it right, but one of those few times that Vegas got it completely wrong. I think now the line is slim to where he's an underdog by a lot less of a margin. But I remember the odds opened up at him as like a plus 135 underdog. I was like, what are these guys on that are making these odds? So I expect Miocic to prove to the world why he is the GOAT heavyweight fighter. And I think I think this is going to be the perfect appetizer to the inevitable Miocic John Jones heavyweight championship fight. And I think that's the fight that we're all excited to see. So Miocic just needs to survive the first round, and I think he'll get the job done once again.
Yeah, guys, I'm excited for it, right? I mean, as we said, Sean O'Malley, we've interviewed him before. It's on the TWSN YouTube channel. Go subscribe to us right now. That's an undercard, and we also got the main fight, so I'm excited for that. But guys, another show, right? Another show, exciting and fun to talk about every single Tuesday night. We are here. Make sure you guys follow us on Instagram, right? You can follow Max, follow Will, follow Jake, follow all our guys. Follow TWSN. We got the Right Way Sports Network. We got all our content coming out. Business is booming here at the Right Way Sports Network, and now is the time.
Stop.
Now is the time. Now is the time.
You're giving me nightmares. Stop.
Now is the time to buy in. And I mean, Will, business is booming, man. Business is booming. But guys, thank you very much. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the TWSN live show. As always, guys, the show will go on. Have a good night.